good, as high as it can go, and yet still loves us who are so far from that. Amen? Hey, good morning.
Leads to Proverbs chapter 26. Proverbs 26, we're in a series of messages on LOL, which means, for those of you of the my generation and up, it means laugh out loud. I always told my kids that it means lots of laughs, that it's LOL. We've been talking about some different things. First week we looked at David, who was pretending to be crazy. Second week we looked at the story of Jehoram, who you don't really know this guy very much. He was the son of a king of Israel, and when he died, the scripture says, it's kind of funny, scripture says, to no one's regret. Everybody was glad he was gone. Week 3 we talked about Jonah, the reluctant prophet who did not want God to spare the people of Nineveh. He didn't want him to spare them so much that he ran from God so they wouldn't hear the message, the gospel. And they did. They repented. Jonah was upset about it. On the hillside, he wanted to see him burnt up like in fire and brimstone, but instead God spared them. Then last week, we talked about one of the classic stories of the Bible, Balaam and the donkey talking back to him, and him talking to the donkey. And today, we're not going to be in a story of the Bible. There's a whole lot of places we could have gone to, but for the last series of messages on this LOL series, we're going to go to the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs. Very, very important book in the Bible. If you say you do not understand the Bible, that's why you don't read it, it's too hard for you to understand, then you need to go to the book of Proverbs because it is very, very easy to understand. Like, just an example, here you are in chapter 26. Look at verse number 1. Look how funny that is. There's a lot of humor. There's a gold mine of humor in the book of Proverbs. It says, like snow in summer or rain in harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool. Now, there is a couple of things that I'll give you an example of some funny stuff in the book of Proverbs. Chapter 11, verse number 22. It says, like a gold ring and a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. So, any ladies in here show no discretion. 21:19 says this: better to live in the corner of a roof than in a wide house with a brawling woman. That's good wisdom right there. That's but it's also very, very funny. Better to live on the corner of a rooftop than in the White House with a quarrelsome wife. So there we have some of the examples of the humor. And this week's is, I chose this week's out of a lot of different places in the Bible. It's some hysterical stuff because it's Labor Day weekend, and the title of this message is "You Lazy Bum." And you know that phrase, and it's spoken, in that "get up, you lazy bum." You probably hear that occasionally, but most of us don't even know what Labor Day is and why we have this holiday. It's a federal holiday, and it was founded in 1894. Began the movement in the 1880s, and it took them that long. I didn't know we had a federal government in 1894. But I asked the first service how many of them remembering the founding of that holiday, and there were several that remembered when that came into existence. Wow! And I hope they were kidding, but it's a holiday set aside to celebrate the American worker. And in true American fashion, what do we do with it? We make a holiday of it, and everybody gets a day off. Everybody gets a break. Everybody gets a break. But you guys that are in school, you don't care. You just get the day off from school, right? All you teachers, all you students, you're just like glad to not have to go to work. And this book of Proverbs, let me give you a little bit of some insight into this book. First of all, you can read through the entire chapter or the entire book in about an hour if you sit down and read it. It's very, very good stuff. You can read through it in 31 days. If you read a chapter a day, there's 31 chapters. It ends with the Proverbs woman. And she kind of backs up the whole theme of the book, which is on wisdom. And how we get wisdom, and how we become wise. And it's contrasted with the fool. And then there are many sub-themes, one of which is a sluggard, someone who is lazy. So that's what we're going to look at today here in chapter 26, a very funny passage of Scripture. But the word proverb means to be like. So what the Lord allowed the writers to do and how He inspired them to write these things is these proverbs are meaning to be like. So they use an everyday image that everyone would understand, and then they couple that with use it to explain a moral or a spiritual truth. So that's how it is brought out. So the book is a comparison between common images and some of life's profound truths. And believe it or not, there is truth yet in the world. There is truth, and God's Word is truth. And so He's saying these things because we as people, we always want to redefine what truth is. We always want to change. It's not really true. We don't really need to believe that. We don't really do that. But the Proverbs gives us back, pulls us back, puts our feet back in reality and says, yes, there is truth. There is truth. So they're simple moral statements that highlight and teach the fundamental realities about life. And many of the Proverbs use humor, and humor is a great way to bring out truth. You can take a lot of things if you can take a hard truth if it's said in a humorous way, and you get that. And so the very idea of some of these Proverbs being humorous is it disarms the listener so that they take it in and they understand it more. So while we're still laughing, then we begin to realize, hey, that applies to me. But we take it in, and it really sets in with us. Today's laugh comes from Proverbs chapter 26, verse 13 through 15. The sluggard says, there is a lion in the road, there's a lion in the streets. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. So this is incredible. So you have someone that's a sluggard. They're still in bed. They don't want to get up. They don't want to go to work. They don't want to get out of the house because there might be a lion out in the street. There might be a lion out in the road. Now, I've got to watch the screen because in the first service, Jimmy Johnson running the PowerPoints, he's always adding stuff and everybody's laughing and I have no idea what they're laughing about. But he had a picture out on the Serengeti with all these Jeeps, and there were lions all through the road. So he kind of blew that theory out. But the sluggard says, there might be something happen, so I better not leave the house. I better just stay in bed, and where it's nice and warm and cozy, and yawn and roll over. And then the very next verse says, as a door turns upon the hinges, so does a sluggard upon his bed. And if you think about that, every time you roll over at night, if you wake up when you roll over, you think about that door on the hinges, and then that last image, hysterical. The person will put their hand in the dish, but they're just too lazy to bring the food to their mouth and eat it. So I think about this passage of Scripture when I was studying this week. I couldn't help but think of Cousin Eddie. And I'm not sure, but Cousin Eddie, I think, was from Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. And if you remember from the movie Vacation, Cousin Eddie shows up at Clark's house, and unexpected, unannounced, and turns out he's unemployed, he has nowhere to go, and he just went out to Clark, and they're going to try and get some money and stuff in his RV, and he parked out front, and he says to Clark, that Clark is what you call an RV. Now, don't get any ideas. We're taking it with us when we leave here in a month or so. Have you guys seen the movie Vacation? You watch it every year at Christmas time? How many of you have watched it this year already without Christmas time? Yeah, it's got some funny stuff in it. One of my favorite parts is when him and Clark and Cousin Eddie are in the living room and they're getting eggnog and they're talking, and Clark's trying to get intimate with him and say, "So Eddie, where are you working?" Whatever, and he said, "Oh, I haven't found a job yet. And, I'm holding out for something in management." That is hysterical. If you know anything about the work ethic of anybody, he's not going to take a job unless he's in charge. So it's really funny stuff. But here from this passage of Scripture, there's a lion in the road, there's a lion in the streets. His door turns upon its hinges. So does a sluggard on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to even bring it back to his mouth. So what do we know about the lazy? Well, first of all, the lazy, they do work hard, but their imagination works harder than their body does because they come up with all kinds of excuses. So they're rationalizing why they cannot go to work, why they cannot leave the house, why they cannot get up. Their mind works harder than their body. Now, there was 5 of us kids growing up. My youngest sister, Barbie, she was one that loved to be held. She was one that loved to be spoiled. She was one that was, in my opinion, was the laziest. But every Sunday night, she would get sick with something, and she'd start complaining about something, why she couldn't go to work. I mean, why she couldn't go to work. Hello. Why she couldn't go to school. So every Sunday night, she would complain about, I don't think I can go, I don't think I can go. Well, she'd exhausted everything of her excuses. And I'm sorry to ruin your image of Aunt Barbie there, Abby, but she said, I remember one, she was probably in 3rd, 4th grade, and she's like, Mommy, I don't feel good. And my mom's like, well, what's the matter, baby? She's like, my tongue hurts. You know, she just ran out of things to be sick about, but it was all because she was doing it. And it was kind of like, oh, Barbie, you going to school today? Cool. You know, normally she was staying at home. But the sluggard says, there's a lion outside, I shall be slain in the streets, coming up with excuses, reasons why they can't get out and get up and get to work. So sometimes it's easier to work hard at coming up with excuses than it is at work hard at actually doing the job, anything that needs to be done. Second thing is, the lazy people at their root, at their heart, is that they are very, very prideful people. Part of the wisdom part of the Proverbs, the instruction that we get, the wisdom is that we need to be wise, that we need to, and part of that wisdom, there is a humility there. Well, the prideful, they don't have that humility. They're very prideful. That's the root, that is the cause, because it's always, they've got someone else's disease. It's always someone else should be doing this, or someone else should be providing for them, or someone should be doing this for them, and they shouldn't have to do it. So it's the least that they can do, and they can still be lazy. Sometimes they'll do what they have to do, but they're not going to do anything more. Get the job done, but maybe that's all they're going to do is get the job done. I'll never forget talking to a older guy, and he said, I needed to go by there, and this was in Texas, and he said, you can come by about 5 o'clock. He said, in my business, come by about 5 o'clock. And I'll have time to talk with you. He said, all the worthless people will be gone right at 5 o'clock. And it just struck me as funny, because he's like, they're gone, you know, they're ready to go, they're packing up, and at 2 minutes till, they're gone. You know, it's that store you go to, and it says they're open to a certain time, but if you get there 10 minutes till, they've already locked the door. You know, we're not giving you that 10 minutes. Really what we mean is 5-ish. You know, that we're doing. So there's that lazy, that desire, that it's a prideful thing of I'm only going to do the least that I can do. The lazy person wants a life of ease. They want it filled with luxuries and lifestyles. They want everything that everybody else has, but they don't want to have to do what it takes to get all of those things. You know, the sluggard is a consumer of what he has, what is given to him. And he cannot deny himself immediate gratification. So it's just gotta have, gotta have, gotta have. The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, Proverbs 13:4 says, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. So there is that contrast again. You be a sluggard, you're always going to want and crave what everybody else has, but the diligent one is going to have what he needs. David Ramsey is an incredible, incredible resource that we've had, that God has raised up to help countless people with finances and their budgeting and all of those things. And David Ramsey says, live like no one else so that you can live like no one else. And there's some real truth in that. It is amazing. Live like no one else. So deny yourself, be thrifty, use coupons, do the things, but so that you can live like no one else. I was in a store the other day, Harbor Freight, and as I was standing in line, I saw these people getting out their phones and they were pulling up things, and I'm like, I wonder what they're doing, you know? So I kind of casually looked over and thinking, well, they're pulling up a coupon. I'm like, what? Where is this coupon? How many of you ever used the coupon on your phone? Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull it up, pull up the website, boom, there it is. 20% off, Labor Day weekend. So, like, hey, I got a coupon. Zach would be so proud of me because he taught me how you can check your email from your phone. Isn't that crazy? Now, it's not that I didn't know you couldn't check your email from your phone. It's just I felt like I couldn't read it as well from my computer. At least that's the excuse that I'm making. But anyway, you can also pull up coupons on your phone. So Anyway, but that is, lazy people, they work hard at making excuses, and they're really prideful at their heart, but they also, they don't think about tomorrow. They cannot think about the future. You know, they never think about what could happen or what will happen. That is a certainty, but yet they never think about it. They're very, very nearsighted. Because whatever's easy, enjoyable is always the choice. Whatever is right now. They don't think ahead. They have no plan, no saving, no preparedness. Here's another proverb about the sluggard. Chapter 20, verse number 4. The sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. So he's got these fields, and he could be planting crops, but instead, he's not plowing. It's too cold outside. The wind's blowing. It's not comfortable. It's not, all these, there might be a lion out there. So then when the harvest comes, he's got nothing to harvest. And it says he will have nothing. Now, we know that work is a part of the curse. Work is not enjoyable. I don't think there's anybody that likes to go to work. It isn't enjoyable for anybody. I remember, I don't know, first or second grade when I realized that my dad didn't get summers off like we did from school. I thought as he was working, you don't get summers off. When are you going to work, Dad? And he's like, well, I don't get summers off. And it's just amazing, but nobody enjoys going to work. Nobody enjoys Mondays. If you had your choice, you would rather not do those things. Luke 15 gives a story about a sluggard, and it is the prodigal son. You see, the prodigal son meets all these things, all these qualifications. He wants everything without doing anything. He doesn't even want to wait till his dad dies before he gets his inheritance. Give me that now so that I can enjoy life, so that I can go out and do and live the way I want to live and have a great time, That prodigal son is a true picture of a lazy person. Here's a couple more quotes from Dave Ramsey. He says this: act your wage. Act your wage. Second thing he says, David Ramsey, we buy things with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. How true is that? How true is that? Next thing, lazy people can be lazy without being lazy. So they can work, and they work hard at some things, but they neglect what they should be doing. So there's certain things they should be doing, but instead they're working hard at things they don't need to be working hard with. It's kind of like this. Here's an example. So you're in school and you've got this test next week. So you begin studying for this test. And all the while you're neglecting the project that you have due the very next day. I'm not going to do that because I'm busy studying for the test next week. So they're working hard at something, but they're neglecting what they should be doing. So it's easy to get caught up in this society to doing things that will reap nothing, that will have no benefit for what we should be doing. I want you to ask yourself a question. What would your current or past coworkers say about your work ethic? What would they say about your work ethic? What would they say about your work ethic? Now, I had the privilege of doing a funeral this past week of a man, 92 years old. And I agree with Tom Brokaw that is one of the greatest generations of American generation, because those people knew how to work. This whole movement about being green is hysterical, because I remember my grandparents having a whole drawer full of bread sacks, that they would save. And a whole drawer full of bread ties that they would save because they would use them over and over and over again. I remember my mom getting from my grandmother, we lived close to them. I didn't have any boots, and we got an unexpected snow, and we had to walk to school in the snow. And it was like 10 feet, right? And it uphill both ways, yes. But I remember my mom getting some bread sacks. You know where this is going? From my grandmother for me to wear over my tennis shoes. Hello. You don't look like a nerd. You're walking in bread sacks. Hey, but the feet were dry. I'm telling you, the feet were dry. But this whole green movement, that generation, they just knew how to make something out of nothing. And you know what they did was, Tom Brokaw describes them, they came home from World War II and they built a nation. That's what they did. So they worked hard. They didn't have all of these government programs and benefits and all these different things. All they knew was hard work, and so they did it. And so they did it. I'm so thankful that my dad was raised on a dairy farm. That really meant a lot to us 5 kids, him being raised on a dairy farm, because he taught us how to work. I thought my dad was the coolest thing. I remember like in 3rd or 4th grade, get this, because he got me a push mower, just like he had gotten my older brother and my oldest brother a push mower, so we all had our own. And my dad's like, you're going to take care of this. You're going to use it to cut the grass. You get to mow with your older brothers. I was like, awesome. Yeah, you got to check the gas. You can teach you how to check the oil. And you guys get to mow in a line, and you can go do this trim while they're doing the front yard. You can do we live on a little over an acre. He says, you guys are going to have fun doing this. You're so cool, Dad. About the 3rd time, I'm like, what kind of torture is this? How come Gail Holt got a Honda 70 motorcycle? I got a push mower. That's what I got. But, my dad is a hard worker. And, you can see it from his hands. He's got dirt that won't come. He's got grease that won't come clean from his hands. That's, you probably know someone like that. So my dad has a Dodge pickup truck, and it wouldn't pull his camper through the mountains. He was having trouble. So he's like, I got to sell this. I'm going to get a bigger truck. So he found a truck, and he bought it as a repossession. Well, by the time he went and got the bank, got the money, went and got the truck, whoever had owned it, he figured out, had gone by in the night and put water in the engine block. So by the time he drove it home, it messed up the engine. Now, my dad's a mechanic. He worked for Santa Fe Railroad as a machinist for 40-some years, and then all the time growing up, he also owned his own business. In the evenings, he would go and work on cars from 5 o'clock until about 9, 10 o'clock at night, every night, 5 days a week. All day Saturday, he would go to his business, and then he worked his full-time job at Santa Fe Railroad there in Topeka, Kansas. So, he just worked and worked and worked. So he knows how to do this stuff. So I said, well, what are you going to do, Dad? And he's like, well, I'm going to have to change out the engine. I'm going to have to find an engine and buy an engine for this truck. I said, well, you can't take it back. And he said, no, I talked to him. It's, once it drove off a lot, it was it. So I told him, well, check your car insurance and see if they would do something. Well, they did. They helped him out with his engine. But anyway, so I was talking to him a week or so later, and I said, hey, how about your engine? Did you get that done? He goes, well, it's in. I got to go pick it up. My engine's being shipped. But he said, I'm looking for a lift, engine hoist. I got to find an engine hoist. I said, well, what happened to yours? He goes, I haven't had that for a long time. I got rid of mine a long time ago. So then a few weeks later, we're talking, carrying conversation. And then I finally said, Dad, what about your engine? Did you get that in? And he goes, oh, yeah, I got that done. Oh, where'd you find an engine hoist? And he goes, oh, I never did find one. He said I had to pull it out back and use the tree to pull the engine out. Guys, my dad is 84 years old. And I go, Dad, you shouldn't be doing that. And he's like, oh yeah, that's the last one I'm going to do. 84 years old. I can't. And my dad, you wouldn't believe that he's my dad, but he's only like this tall. My grandfather was like this tall. My grandmother was like this tall on his side. And my dad took after the mom, and he's just a little guy. I like to pick him up sometimes. But he's 84 years old, and dude, you see these people that work hard, and they have no other choice but just to work hard. So you think about your work ethic and how it applies to other people and how it instills in other people. How do you, as a parent, instill in your kids a work ethic? How do you instill in them how to work hard? I remember having a conversation with Abby and Gabe that, what are your friends doing at certain times with what you're doing at certain times? How you're spending your time versus how they're spending your time. And so, like, one of the first jobs they were doing, they were getting paid $40 a month for this job. And I said, we'd get done with it, and I'd say, what you were doing here, where you were cleaning this office, you look at your friends, what do you think they were doing? Oh, they were probably playing or video games or whatever. And I said, exactly. You're making more use of your time than what other people are. So what do you do to teach your kids how to have a work ethic? They should have responsibility, even if it doesn't need to be done by them. But if you're having them do it, they're learning a work ethic. I was talking to a girl that I know that works at Chick-fil-A, Gina Leonardi. Maybe some of you know the Leonardi family, but I was talking to Gina and I said, some of you work with Gabe yet? Because Gabe started working at Chick-fil-A. And she goes, oh yeah, I work with Gabe. I said, well, how's he doing? Have you trained him, and how's he doing? She said, oh, he's doing great. He seemed to be a good worker. And she said, it gets pretty crazy in here, and he doesn't ever get flustered if he's at the register and the line's out the door and, around the building. He never gets flustered or whatever. And what I didn't tell her was that when Gabe, he's not going to get flustered. I mean, there is life and the speed of life, and then there's the speed of Gabe. And that is just Gabe. I mean, he's not geared for, like high speeds. It's just, he's going to plod his way through, and he's not going to be flustered at all. It's just what it is. It's the way God wired him, which I'm thankful for in some instances, unless the house is on fire, we're trying to get out, or, unless there's an emergency or we're late, we're trying to get him out of the house, something like that. But, all those things. And I'll never forget when Gabe came home from his training at Chick-fil-A. This is like his first real job. He's done a lot of other jobs. He came home and he said, I don't think it's fair, Daddy. They can fire you at Chick-fil-A if you're $1 off on your register. If you're $1 short, they say they can fire you, and they'll fire you. I was like, wow, that's pretty hardcore. He's like, yeah, it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And he goes, and you know what? My first day at work, they're having me pick up stuff off top shelves. They're having me move this, carry this, go check the bathrooms, clean the bathrooms. He goes, that's just not fair, It's just not fair. And I said, well, you're brand new. I said, look at your name tag. It says Gabe Trainee. So you're a trainee. He's got to do all, and you're the new guy. They're going to say, yeah, we got Gabe here. He's a trainee. Go clean the bathrooms. They've got seniority now over you. They've worked there 2 weeks. You've only worked there 2 hours. But I said to him, I said, Gabe, let me tell you what's not fair. Is a company that has real strict policies in how they service their customers, and they pride themselves on their customer service. And they have just a real high ethic for how clean things are and how things work, and their brand that they go really hard to protect. What's not fair is just take for instance like a punk 17-year-old coming in there and saying, well, that's not fair, that's not where we're going to do that, we're not going to be like that, we're not going to do this. Well, pretty soon, they're not having customers because the orders are always wrong, or the money's always wrong, or the change is always wrong, or they're having to wait so long for their orders, and pretty soon they're having to not hire punk 17-year-olds because they can't afford to hire punk 17-year-olds. I said, that's really what's not fair. And he's like, hey, I see what you did there. Well, what kind of a work ethic? What kind of a work ethic can we inspire in our kids? I have a friend named Mike Anderson, and he lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Mike Anderson has his own flooring business, and what I mean by that is that Mike Anderson does floors himself. So he does a lot of floors. And most of the time when I was around him, he was in our church. He worked 7 days a week, so he would come on Sunday morning, go to work, come to church, go right back to work, and he always drove separate than from his wife and his kid. But his kids also worked in the business. I remember his son graduated from high school. And he would work with his dad at Christmas and the summers and on spring break. And like at spring break, his son made $9,000 doing floors with his dad. That was his best. And here he is, 18 years old, graduating. He's got a brand new pickup because he's got a habit for the business. And he goes and buys a condo in Ankeny, Iowa. His son does. At 18 years old while he's going to junior college, and he pays cash for it, $90,000 for this condo. I mean, that he's instilling a work ethic. And I'll never forget, we hired him to do our kitchen floor. We were remodeling the house. We had him do our kitchen floor, and he tells me that Josh, that's his son, Mike, says, hey, I'm not going to be there today. The tile's all in, it just needs to be grouted and all that. So Josh is going to drop Amy by. Now, Amy was the younger sister. She was like 13 years old at this time, and he said, you can help Amy, but just do what she'll teach you how to do the grout. I'm like, I'm a grown man. But here come little Amy in there, and hard worker, showing you how to do the grout floors, and clean up after the, no, you can't wait that long, Jerry, it's gonna dry, you gotta get that, you gotta do this, you gotta teach me all these things. It's like Amy, this 13-year-old, I mean, his kids knew how to work, and he paid them. And I'll never forget her joking, saying, hey, my dad told me to tell you that I'm your boss, but you are paying me to be your boss. I was like, how does that work?